Welcome to the meeting of the San Francisco Public Library Commission for February 3rd, 2022. The time is 4:30 p.m. I am Margot Schaub and I serve as the Library Commission Affairs Analyst. As an ongoing reminder, due to the COVID-19 health emergency, the Library Commission meeting is being held virtually and members will participate in the meeting remotely, pursuant to orders issued by the mayor and current public health recommendations, while allowing the public to observe and address the commission. Commissioners will attend the meeting through video conference and participate to the same extent as if they were physically present. Public comment will be available for each item on this agenda. Members of the public can observe the meeting using the Webex system by following the link in the library's event calendar or by calling local 1-415-655-0001 and entering the access code for the meeting. Today's meeting access code is 2484-158-2970. Attendees wishing to offer public comment should wait to raise their hand until public comment for that specific item has been called. To make public comment when connected by phone, please raise your hand by dialing *3 when public comment is called to be added to the queue for the agenda item you intend to comment on. Individuals joining by Webex should click the raise hand button in the lower right-hand portion of the participant panel in order to be added to the queue. Best practices to make public comments are to call from a quiet location, speak clearly and slowly, and turn down your television or radio. Each commenter will have 3 minutes to speak. Anyone wishing to make a public comment on an agenda item will remain on mute until their line is opened. Bill Kolb from Media Service Operations will facilitate this meeting and assist in moderating public comment. Mr. Kolb will call upon members of the public by name or by caller number to prompt each attendee who wishes to provide public comment. I will now commence with roll call. Library Commissioners in attendance are President Connie Wolf, Vice President Pete Wong, Commissioners Mall, Ono, Wardell, Giarduzzi, Lopez, and Bolander.
Thank you very much, and hello and welcome to the February 3rd, 2022 meeting of the San Francisco Public Library Commission. Delighted to have everyone here today. I will begin our meeting by reading the Ramaytush Ohlone Land Acknowledgement. The San Francisco Public Library Commission acknowledges that we occupy the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. We recognize that the Ramaytush Ohlone understand the interconnectedness of all things and have maintained harmony with nature for millennia. We honor the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples for their enduring commitment to Warup, Mother Earth, as the indigenous protectors of this land and in accordance with their tradition. The Ramaytush Ohlone have never ceded, lost, nor forgotten their responsibilities of the caretakers of this place, as well as for all peoples who reside in their traditional territory. We recognize that we benefit from living and working on their traditional homeland. As uninvited guests, we affirm their sovereign rights as First Peoples and wish to pay our respects to the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the Ramaytush community. We recognize to respectfully honor Ramaytush peoples, we must embrace and collaborate meaningfully to record Indigenous knowledge in how we care for San Francisco and all of its people. Thank you, members of the public who are attending this meeting remotely. If you have not already done so, all the materials for this meeting are available for download on the Library Commission page of the library's website, sfpl.org. Today we have a total of 6 agenda items, and we begin with agenda item number 1 and open it up for general public comment. Members of the public who wish to provide general public comment should now raise their hands in order to be added to the queue. If you are using the Webex interface, click the raise hand button in the lower right-hand portion of the screen. And if you have called into the Webex dial-in number, please press *3 to line up to speak. Operations, are there any commenters in the queue at this time?
Madam President, there is a commenter in the queue.
Thank you, Operations. Please begin allowing general public comment.
Call in user 12. Your 3 minutes begins now.
Good evening, Commissioners. This is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association, Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com, and we can also be reached at P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California, 94117-0544. And as I've said before, I give this contact information and relationship information because I think it's important to be audible and visible. That's what public comment is for. And because in a normal in-person meeting, folks can go up to each other at any time, can see where the person is who's speaking or did speak, and basically approach them with comments, suggestions, perhaps an exchange of contact information for further contact and so on. And those of us like myself who are on the telephone cannot do that. I didn't hear the roll call, but in the past, the roll call has been done by an announcement from administration and not by the voice acknowledgement of each person. So I would like to make a request from each one of the library commissioners to have a screenshot of what you're seeing on your screen, or at least on the portion that you're looking at as part of the system that enables remote access. I'd like to see what you're looking at right now. And there's no way for me to know if you've done the usual roll call, as I've described. There's no way for me to know if somebody has left, if somebody is there, if everybody is there as announced, and so on and so forth. We've actually heard occasionally that there was an error in the roll call taking. So that's an oral request for information, and I'd like a screenshot of what you're looking at. The library is continuing with openings, and those are good, and we're glad to hear of that. But we're very concerned that there's talk about full service and full openings and that all the libraries are open, when in fact there are huge diminishments of service and of materials. The first thing is that the evening hours have been almost, if not entirely, cut from what they were pre-COVID. And that's the very first thing people say when you've taken surveys over the years. That's what they want more of. We're also finding books in short supply. We're also finding magazines and periodicals not current at all the locations, and another range of issues concerning access to virtual programs not being made available by telephone, nor the publicity about them. So we would appreciate your reviewing that and talking about that when you take this anything up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warfield, for your comments. Operations, is there another commenter in the queue?
Madam President, at this time, there are no additional commenters. I'll pause for a moment to allow any additional commenters to join the queue if they so choose. Madam President, there are no additional commenters in the queue at this time.
Thank you very much, Operations. Hearing that there is no further request for comment, general public comment is now closed. So we will now move on to agenda item number 2, which is to discuss and possibly have action on the fiscal year 23 and 24 budget priorities. I turn it over to librarian Michael Lambert for comments.
Thank you, President Wolf. Maureen Singleton, our Chief Operating Officer and Acting CFO, will take the lead in presenting tonight's budget presentation. Maureen?
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Commissioners. So today's budget discussion will review some of the materials that we've presented publicly at the Commission meetings in December and January, as well as walk you through some budget options for the Commission to decide upon and potentially vote on today. Next slide, please. So the next several slides are a review of what's been presented before to the Commission, starting with the overarching budget calendar that we use every budget cycle. And we are in the budget development phase currently, in the final effort potentially this month or today, and for sure this month, for the Commission budget proposal discussions. The submission to the controller in the mayor's office happens on or about February 21st every year. It depends on whether or not there's a holiday or the 21st falls on a weekend. Next budget slide, please. So here's a high-level summary of the overarching budget background that we reviewed with the commission last month. The city overall is projecting a $108.1 million surplus over the next 2 fiscal years, with the majority of that falling in the second of the 2-year cycle, with nearly $82 million surplus projected at this time. The library's preservation fund, which is the majority of the library's overall revenue source for fiscal 23, is estimated at $173 million, or about $1.6 million more than what was estimated to be available revenue with the last budget cycle for fiscal 23. The projected budget, available budget for fiscal 24 for LPF is $184.4 million. And the fund balance is estimated at $26.4 million by the end of fiscal year 22, the current fiscal year. Generally, the mayor's budget instructions reminded the departments to prioritize restoring the city's vibrancy, focus on recovery, accountability, and equity. For self-supporting departments like the library, we are expected to balance within our own revenue source projections. Next slide, please. Here are the library's budget priorities, and as I typically mention, these serve as our guideposts as we continue to invest in our department and in the community. These serve as pillars and ways in which we determine investments to sustain and where we want to adjust each budget cycle. This budget cycle, some themes that rose to the top with the proposals that we received include advancing racial equity through our collections, digital access, capital and facilities, right-sizing our operations, which is really about truing up to meet our needs based on spend trends and the inflation aspects. Still on the horizon for the city and for the library are potential investments in the Children and Families Recovery Plan. Next slide, please. So the next several slides, as I mentioned already, are a review of what we've already discussed with the commission both in December and January. So I'm not going to talk about them again with a lot of detail, but they are provided here for reference for folks and for the commission to ask any follow-up questions of myself, but any one of the chiefs that were involved in developing these proposals. With respect to racial equity, 2 key investments would be in the area of collection investment in BIPOC representation. That investment it begins in fiscal 23 with $200,000 and carries forward into an ongoing budget investment for fiscal 24 as well. The library has previously invested in the Scholars at Home program, and with the proposed investment for fiscal 23, we're looking at adding another $500,000 to that investment for seating libraries at people's homes to bring the total investment to $1.3 million. Next slide, please. With respect to digital access, some key investments include refreshing assistive technology for the library's Talking Book Braille Center. That's an investment of a total of $200,000, with 100 being one time and 100 being ongoing. And this is making sure that our digital asset management system is current, updated, and we can continue to digitize. I'm sorry, I'm describing the wrong thing. I have too many memories in my head floating about all at once. But it is for ongoing vendor agreement to procure the technical support and hardware needed for our Talking Book Braille Center. See, I was talking about the Digi Center. Too many things in my brain at the moment. But so I might as well highlight that since I already started talking about it. The Digi Center investments also include one-time and ongoing investments. This is directly about our digital asset management system. It's about expanding your capacity so we can digitize more materials for the public to access, as well as ensuring that our ongoing software is set up to manage the expanding need for our population. Next slide, please. So our capital and facilities investments focus in on really renewing and refreshing our assets to keep our materials in a state of good repair. Last time we talked about finalizing the numbers for our camera and server replacements, as well as our key card reader program. Both of those are nearing the end of their useful life, and this is investing in refreshing and replacing the systems so that we can continue to provide those services. What you see highlighted here at the bottom of this table are the major capital investments that we discussed in a little bit more detail in January. Of the nearly $5.8 million investment that's proposed for 23, $3 million of that was for the Mission Branch Library to adjust for the additional project costs that was discussed with the Commission back in September. About $1 million additional dollars would be allocated to the Ocean View project to keep the design and planning moving forward, as well as $1.7 million additional for the Chinatown project to bring that to full funding for fiscal 23. The $10 million investment you see in capital for fiscal 24 is an aggressive investment of $7 million for Ocean View and $3 million for Chinatown, assuming some level of cost inflation for that program as well. Next slide, please. The focus of the investments for right sizing is really about making sure we're continuing to renew and refresh our IT investments in networks and servers, as well as refreshing our telephone services for our patrons. Also in here, you see investments that true up the need for our uniforms for the library, for custodial and security. And then, as we mentioned last time, the correcting of the allocation for the Poet Laureate stipend from $5,000, which was the base investment prior to the increase in the allocation. So the new ongoing allocation on an annual basis for the Poet Laureate is $35,000. Next slide, please. So this is a high-level summary report of the investments by the key investment categories: racial equity, digital access, capital and facilities, and operations right-sizing. It's broken out here by both fiscal year and one-time and ongoing investments. At a summary level, for fiscal 23, you're looking at a total proposed investment of $12.8 million, and for fiscal 24, nearly $11.5 million. Next slide, please. Still on the horizon, as I mentioned, are the potential investments for the Children and Family Recovery Plan. This is the same exact information that was provided publicly to the Commission as well as our general public in January. The general background for this overarching plan for the city was developed by the Department of Children, Youth, and their families to look at how we can help children and our family recover from the pandemic. Their community engagement effort began in July of 2021, and the planning process moved and began in September of 2021. The potential partnership opportunities for the library really would center around prior and existing services that the library has, which includes both YouthWorks and hubs. Those planned investment discussions are still underway with the Mayor's Office and the Department of Children, Youth, and their families. We can provide an update for the Commission at a future date on how those discussions resolve. Next slide, please. So at this point, I'm going to move into the budget option discussions for the Commission. We're going to present to the Commission today 2 budget options. The first option is to approve everything that's already been discussed and clarified with the Commission on the amounts requested at the January 20th, 2022 Commission meeting, with an adjustment just for fiscal 24 as noted in this table on slide 16. What happened when we were taking account of all of the proposed investments for both fiscal 23 and 24, as previously discussed publicly with the Commission, is that we determined in fiscal 24 that we had additional revenue, so revenues in excess of the proposed expenditures. With that in mind, under option 1, in addition to approving everything that had already been presented, the 2 other additional investments or allocations that we would recommend under option 1 would be allocating an additional $2 million to renewals, so that in fiscal 24, we can take and build upon and start acting upon the building systems renewal plan that would be developed in fiscal 23. The renewals program for interiors is really focusing in on our HVAC, our heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems, our boilers, and efforts to electrify our buildings, electrification of the buildings. The other proposal you see listed here is to allocate the remaining surplus revenue at $14.5 million as a reserve item. So it would be set aside for investments in fiscal 24 for the next budget cycle, which would cover 24 and 25. Next slide, please. If the Commission were to approve this option, this is a high-level overview of what the total budget would be by sources and uses. On the sources side, it totals $179.4 million. And to balance out, we would need to dip into our fund balance by approximately $5.5 million. Just slightly more than we've dipped into fund balance as part of the budget for fiscal 22, which we are currently in. The total investments on the expenditure side have to balance with our sources, and that's why we have to dip into our fund balance. You'll see here for fiscal 23, the total labor costs are nearly $107 million. And the non-labor, which covers concepts such as investments such as collections, our blip debt service, our services provided by other departments, and our capital investments total $72.5 million. In fiscal year 24, you're looking at a total budget of all sources of $185.2 million. There's no projected need to use fund balance because, as I mentioned already, there was a projected surplus of revenue as it stood based on the investments proposed in January. So with the idea outlined in option 1, you would see a total investment for capital of $12.75, which includes that additional $2 million for the renewals interior investment, and then a reserve item of $14.5 million. Next slide, please. Budget option 2 for the Commission to consider would once again approve all of the investments that we've already discussed with the Commission at the January 20th Commission meeting, but adjust the investments as follows for fiscal 24. Again, no proposed changes for the fiscal 23, but for fiscal 24, what you see here, again, once again, allocates $2 million for the renewals investment in the interiors for fiscal 24. What's different here is that for the Ocean View project, we would propose being even more aggressive in moving towards full total funding for this program by adding an additional $8 million in fiscal 24 to the $7 that was discussed in January. That would bring a total investment of $15 million. The reason you only see $8 million in this table is to showcase what is different than what was already presented. If we do that, that would leave a remaining allocation for reserves of $6.5 million. Again, that would set that aside for fiscal year 24 budget discussions when we are back here at the same time next year, considering the budget for 24 and 25. Next slide, please. So what you see here is what the budget would look like by major source and use categories, again, similar to option 1, but this time presented to show what it would be like for option 2. Under option 2, there are no differences in fiscal year 23, so the same total budget of $179.4 million with a fund balance use of $5.5 million. What's different here is in fiscal 24. So under option 2, we would actually be investing a total of $20.75 million in capital. Again, really growing by $8 million to allocate additional funding for Ocean View. And then the reserve item would be $6.5 million instead. Again, no need for any fund balance use because revenue was greater than expenditures proposed prior to these adjustments. Next slide, please. So this is a summary slide between the options 1 and 2. So it's really hard at the summary level, I will admit, to clearly see what the differences are between option 1 and option 2. But really for both of them, again, just as a reminder, there is no difference between fiscal year 23 because the only changes that were presented to the Commission were with respect to fiscal 24. For fiscal 24, what you would see in option 1, again, is the $2 million extra for the library interior renewal, so to move forward into action, putting the plan into action that's developed in fiscal 23, and then an allocation of $14.5 million for reserve. Under option 2, the difference with fiscal 24 is that you would have a total extra investment of $10 million for capital, 2 of which is for the interiors, 8 of which would be for Ocean View. And then the remaining allocation available of additional revenues or sources is $6.5 million for reserves. So those are the 2 proposals that the Commission would be considering, and the administration would recommend option 2 as our favored proposal for the Commission. Once we have the Commission approval, we'll be sure to hit that deadline, which would be by the 21st or the next closest working day. Next slide, please. So that concludes my presentation on the budget. I am available for questions or follow-up after public comment. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Maureen, for your extraordinary efforts, your incredible leadership, and really all of the staff at the library for their dedication and fine-tuning and help with making sure that the budget is on track and moving forward in a great direction. I'd like to now turn this over to public comment. Operations, are there any commenters in the queue?
Madam President, there is one commenter in the queue at this time.
Please proceed with the commenter.
Caller 12, your 3 minutes begins now.
Am I caller number 12 now? Is
Yes.
that me? Hello?
Yes, you are. Yes, you may proceed, Mr. Warfield.
All right, thank you. I hope you're starting the clock now. It's Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association, Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com. and P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California, 94117-0544. Thank you again to the presenter and for the presentation. I'm very concerned that there is repeated mentions of concern with racial equity or equity, as you've mentioned on one of your 2 page 5s, and as you've mentioned on page 3. This is not equitable access for those who have less access by computers. The Digital Equity Strategic Plan, which said over 100,000 people in San Francisco, the city's plan for 2019 to 24, said that over 100,000 San Franciscans did not have basic internet access and computers. And in the appendices, here's what it shows about high-speed home internet connectivity. Whites, 92%, blacks, 75%, Asian and Pacific Islanders, 85%, Latinos, 78%. That's not equitable access, especially when you have a tremendous emphasis on remote programs and a tremendously growing emphasis on e-books. In more and more and more cases, something we haven't heard discussed at the library, you are excluding any access to an actual book and simply giving access by e-books. And many, if not most, of your e-book access is not available even to folks who come to headquarters, the main library, or any other branch. You have to have your own equipment to be able to read in a variety of electronic book formats that the library has. That is shocking. It's not equal, it's not free, it's pay to play. And those who can't pay to play or don't want to for privacy or other reasons are just simply left out. That is very wrong. I've talked about debookification at the library for a number of years, and there's no clarity here on page, no number, I guess, 6. E-collections are shown at $10.4 million, with $500,000 more to putting it almost $11 million. There's no indication of what the budget is for actual books that everyone can read and everyone can borrow. No indication.
3 minutes.
We used to know that what the detail.
Thank you, Mr. Warfield, for your comments. I just want to add that if there are any members of the public who wish to add general public comment at this point, you should now raise your hand in order to be added to the queue. Operations, are there any additional commenters in the queue?
Madam President, there are no additional commenters in the queue at this time. I'll pause for a moment to allow any additional commenters to join the queue if they so choose.
Thank you.
Madam President, there are still no additional commenters in the queue.
Thank you, Operations. Hearing no further requests for comment, public comment is now closed. So now we're going to move to discussion among the commissioners on this item. Item number 2, the fiscal year budget 23 and fiscal year budget 24. We've been hearing about this budget for quite a while, and the staff has been refining it. And again, I want to thank Maureen for her leadership on this. We've heard in detail about the strategic priorities and the additions that the staff is recommending. And also, we have been offered 2 different options for examining opportunities for fiscal year 24. There's option 1 and option 2. So I ask the commissioners to raise their hand and let me know if you would like to make a comment and ask questions of the staff. And then following discussion, we will see if there is interest in voting on this item. I see Commissioner Bolander. Would you unmute yourself and offer your comments or questions? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Wonderful presentation as usual. I really appreciate all the detail, especially the options, and really a very kind and considerate way to do this so that we're know what we're voting on. The only question I have is related to the adjustments. I think we call it CPI or some sort of metric of inflation. We had talked about this in January, and I know the controller's office, which does a fantastic job of doing all this, wasn't sure if they were still working on that or not, and if they are, if it will affect these numbers. I know there is also a reconciliation process to go through. And the reason I bring that up is because of looks like we do have reserves just in case there is some costs that may or may not overrun, depending on, of course, the economy and things get more expensive. So if you could just please comment on that, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, thanks for that question. So the controller's office definitely continues to refine their cost projection estimates even during the mayor's phase of the budget. So sometimes it's not surprising to see additional adjustments to labor cost assumptions, especially as the city goes through the negotiations with the unions during this phase of contract negotiations. They also continue to look at other assumptions around increasing costs, but particularly the area where their adjustments around labor, it really impacts the library, would be around labor. So we would continue to see what changes they're seeing in fringe as well as salary costs. And there we would be working with them in the mayor's phase, typically in March and April, to understand how those costs are changing and if we would need to utilize, particularly in fiscal 23, additional funds for additional funds from the fund balance to balance between sources and uses. And then for fiscal 24, really what that would do probably is reduce the amount of money that we would allocate to reserves for the next budget cycle.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I see Commissioner Wardell-Garaducci, your hand raised. Would you like to make a comment or ask questions?
I'll make a comment. Thank you so much. I just want to say that both of the options are obviously very clear. I appreciate it so much. And I just wanted to affirm that the Ocean View branch has been, we've heard from the community over the years. Actually, I think it's been more than one, about the needs of that particular branch. And that's a community that has experienced a sense of divestment or maybe just a lack of investment. And so I just wanted to affirm some of the voices from the past, even pre-COVID, and how much we knew that work was, how much we had heard from the community when we were meeting together in Correct and how they would show up. And to honor that, many times it was intergenerational community. So we'd had young people, adolescents, all the way to some of our, leaders that had been in the community for decades. And so I just want to affirm option 2. As a way to both respond to those requests and urgings that we've heard from the community over the years, but also to actually acknowledge and thank the leadership of the SFPL for putting that option together in response to what they knew that community needed. So I just wanted to make sure that I affirmed that for the record.
Great. Thank you so much for that. That was a wonderful statement in support of what we all think we need in this community. Commissioner Ono, I see your hand raised. Would you like to make a comment or ask questions?
Yes, I wanted to make one comment. I do appreciate Maureen's very thorough and very easy to understand explanation of the budget. It is one of the most difficult parts of being on the commission, but you make it a lot easier for us to make our decision. And as the 2 previous commissioners mentioned, giving us 2 options and explaining it is very helpful. I do just want to make a comment that, you have a slide that said on the horizon regarding children and family recovery plan investments. I know that I want to go ahead and approve the budget today, And I do know that there are discussions continuing on this item. And I don't want to hold up the budget because these discussions have been going on and they could go on past the February 21st due date. So I just want to let the public know that even though we know that there are things hanging, if we do approve the budget tonight, we do it with a clear understanding that there is there are possible changes coming, as there always are during the budget negotiation with the budget office. So I just wanted to just reaffirm that and just clarify where I'm coming from when I do, if we do vote tonight. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Ono. That was very important to acknowledge that and to highlight this future opportunity for the library to really make a difference in this arena. So I appreciate that. Are there any more commissioners who have comments or questions at this time?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, Commissioner Mall.
Yeah. I echo Commissioner Ono's comments. I'm very supportive of the Children and Family Recovery Plan, and I'm happy to see that the library is going to be involved. I wonder what the split will be, or however, is the thinking that the library will be paying for the whole thing. I'm not adverse to that. I just wondered if the library had the deepest pockets to have this, to run this program. That's a question.
Thank you for the question, Commissioner Mall. And I would say it's too early to tell, but highly unlikely that the library would be requested to shoulder the entire burden of any prospective investment in this area. The Department of Children, Youth, and Families, our city and county sister department, would certainly be a strategic partner in any investments, prospective investments associated with the Children and Families Recovery Plan. And there are a number of other departments of city government, along with our San Francisco Unified School District, who could also help leverage resources. Thank you for the question, though.
Well, I'm less optimistic about the competence of a couple of those agencies that you mentioned. The reason I support the library handling this is I think the library would do a good job, because the library does a good job. I would hate to see the school board sort of take this over and just use the library as buildings. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I can assure you that will not be the case.
Okay, good. Okay, the second thing is, I'm assuming that the fee for the poet laureate was very much under market. Is that correct? Is that why you bumped it up so much?
That's correct, because this program originated back in 1996, I want to say, under Willie Brown's administration. So the $5,000 stipend had been there for decades. And, you know, it used to be $5,000 for the entire 3-year commitment. And through our benchmarking, we determined what would be more appropriate. And in doing so, we've now set the highest honorarium for a municipal poet laureate nationwide.
Well, I applaud that. And I think that the poet laureate is a very important position, and our library, by and large, is flush. So I think we should be setting the bar. And that's such an important position. So I'm happy to see that it's been, that the situation has been rectified.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Mall. Thank you, City Librarian. Any other comments from the fellow commissioners?
President Wolf, if I can make a comment really quickly.
Please.
I'm sorry to interrupt like this. I can't click the raise hand button in Webex, so I'm gonna have to do this throughout the meeting. I just wanted to second the comment from Commissioner Wardell-Garaduzzi. Strongly encourage the commission tonight to vote for option 2. Of course, before we get into it, we have so much to be thankful for, and one of them is that we have such a strong budget and such strong support from our residents, the rest of city government, the state, etc. And we also happen to know that you know, with the ability to you know, even set aside this money, which, you know, many library systems are so strapped for cash year over year. We also at the same time know where we want to spend money, and we have seen you know, ourselves make a very strong commitment to the OMI neighborhoods, and it's obviously time to make good on that commitment, and we are currently, and I think this the second budget option of directly committing the funds that we have access to the new library is you know, more than appropriate, is what we need to do. And so, you know, I think in many other circumstances, you know, flexibility with funds is great, and it's nice to preserve that, but it's time to make a statement here. So I encourage again for us to pass option 2 tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further comments? So I want to thank again to the staff. There's no question, fellow commissioners, this is the most important vote we will take this year at this point. This is really allowing the library to continue to be a leader in not only in this community, to be a resource, but also to set a tone for the rest of the country about why libraries matter and how we can make a difference in every community, in every family, in every person's life. And I really, hats off to the library staff. Your strategic priorities are outstanding: racial equity, digital access, capital and facilities management, and right-sizing operations. You are really poised to really continue to make a difference and to provide resources and services that are so essential to making our city humane, equitable, and accessible. And so I just want to thank you. So I turn to my fellow commissioners to see if there is someone who would like to make a motion to approve the fiscal 23-24 budget with either option 1 or option 2 in your motion.
I would like to make a motion to approve this budget and to do it with option 2. And yeah, that's it.
Right, that is Commissioner Wardell Garaducci making a motion for the fiscal year 23-24 budget with option 2. Do I have a second?
I would like to second it.
Everyone wants to second it. Commissioner Lopez seconds the motion. Now I will take a roll call for the remaining commissioners who should vote aye or no. Please say aye or no when I call your name. Vice President Huang.
Aye.
Commissioner Mall. You're on.
Aye.
Commissioner Ono.
Aye.
Commissioner Bolander.
Aye.
And as president, I vote aye as well. So this motion passes unanimously. We have a budget for fiscal year 23-24 with option 2. Thank you very much, commissioners, for your thoughtful comments, your intense investigation of what we're doing, and especially to the library team. We're excited about what you will do in the years ahead. Thank you. So now we will move on to item number 3, which is the branch's capital projects update. This is very exciting, especially knowing that we have also put money into making sure that we have the Ocean View branch is being addressed. So I now turn the meeting over to City Librarian Lambert for the presentation.
Thank you, President Wolf. Next slide, please. Commissioners, library staff is pleased to have this opportunity this evening to provide a progress report on the status of our capital projects for the Mission, Chinatown, and Ocean View branch libraries. Next slide, please. This evening, we are joined by our architect from the Department of Public Works, Andy Sohn, and our acting chief of branches, Rebecca Alcala Veraflor, who will co-present our updates. Next slide. Rebecca, take it away.
Thank you, Michael. Good evening, Library Commissioners. My name is Rebecca Alcala Flor. I am the Acting Chief of Branches. I'm pleased to be here and to speak to you about the community engagement that we've done with the Mission Branch. Slide, please. Thank you. The library hosted a series of 3 meetings in December of 2021 and January 2022. All 3 of these meetings were conducted in English with full Spanish translation. The meetings on the afternoon of Saturday, December 4th and the evening of Tuesday, December 7th were held in the reading room on the 2nd floor of the Mission Branch. These meetings had 14 and 11 attendees respectively. The virtual meeting held on Thursday, January 6th of 2022 was conducted via Zoom. The Zoom meetings were attended by 36 individuals. The library publicized these meetings via email blast to members of the community, posting in the SFPL calendar and sharing bilingual flyers, Spanish and English, at our SFPL to-go and bookmobile service points. In addition, the virtual meeting on January 6th was publicized in the printed at the library newsletter. These meetings were led by former Chief of Branches, Kathy Del Neo, and SF Public Works architect, Andy Sohn. Slide, please. All 3 meetings shared the same agenda, which you can see on this slide. After welcoming the community, the library reviewed the guiding principles of the renovation and provided an overview of prior community engagement opportunities, including the library-led community meetings in spring 2018 and winter 2019, the Civic Design Review Committee, and Historic Preservation Commission meetings in the summer of 2020. And at numerous Library Commission meetings over the past few years. After this review, Andy Sohn shared the final plans for the renovation, and Ms. Del Neo shared an update on the library's plans for temporary service during the renovation of the Mission Branch, as well as the public art process and information about the selected piece by Juana Alicia Araiza. After these presentations, patrons had the opportunity to share feedback and ask questions about the project. Slide, please. Overall, the attendees at the 3 meetings had very positive things to say about the final plans. Quotes such as, "The design looks great and I'm thrilled about the renovation. I'm impressed with the plans for the renovation, especially the community room. It's an innovative way for the community to experience the library. I want to thank the library. A lot of work has been put into this project and it's taking some time to complete, but the final product will be worthwhile." A number of attendees asked questions about the library's timeline for opening the temporary full-service Mission Branch. We heard from community members that print collections in Spanish and English are very important to prioritize in the new space. Patrons had questions about the many seats and how many linear feet of shelving would be incorporated into the renovation of the Mission Branch. Excuse me. Sorry, I lost my, there we go. Architect Andy Sohn shared the furniture plans that will be finalized at a later date and explained the Public Works team is laser focused on getting the project out to bid, which requires the completion of construction documents. Community members asked questions about which staff would sit at each of the 2 service points in the branch and seemed reassured to hear both librarians and circulation staff would be available to help them. Finally, we heard from community members that while they were pleased to have SFPL to-go and bookmobile service, they had been disappointed that the Mission Branch had not begun serving the community earlier. Hearing this feedback about the renovation plans and library service directly from the community was very helpful to both SF Public Works and SFPL staff who were present at the meetings. Next slide, please. I would now like to turn the presentation over to Andy Sohn, who will provide you with information about the Mission Branch renovation. Andy?
Hi there. This is Andy Sohn from Public Works. Thank you for having me. This slide is the next step slide And like Rebecca said, we are laser focused on going out to bid, and we want it to be advertised in January. Unfortunately, that has not happened. These are our next steps. We have an ongoing issue with soils investigation, and we will be doing core sampling in the library. They're going to drill a hole in the floor in the lobby on February 24th and in the children's courtyard. This is part of our building permit review, and we will not be able to get permit approval until the soils investigation is complete. This was a thing that came up late in the permit process. We also have some structural revisions that we are doing related to foundations that came out of the permit process, and those drawings are nearing completion by our structural engineers. It's not on this slide. And then last but not least, we have not been able to conclude our power agreement with PG&E and PUC. We hope to do that this month, but it's been going on as a point of contention between PG&E and PUC for a year. A year ago in February, we anticipated getting approval of our power application for secondary power, and you've heard me talk about this issue before. And then some time later, PG&E changed their opinion about how we might receive power. We've had ongoing conversations with PUC. We did a design charrette this summer with our engineers and PUC to try and resolve the issue. We concluded with good ideas and a proposal. PG&E has been slow in getting back to us. We did meet with them last week. Finally, we have limited opportunities to meet with them, and we're pursuing the issue as intensely as we can. We keep the library abreast of the issue, and we keep our management abreast of the issue as well. You may have seen a recent San Francisco Chronicle article on January 26th that summarized the issue fairly well. And with their 68 delayed city projects, and there's a couple of examples in that article, the Randall Museum in Balboa Pool, which had real problems. But we are packaging our work for bid as soon as we possibly can. We will get it on the street. And that, I wish I had better news for you on that one. The bid period will be 130 calendar days after we get it out. And then the construction period, once it's awarded, would be 22 months. Next slide. Just to remind you of what the project looks like. This is a view of the interior of the historic reading room. Next slide. And this is a view of this number 33. This is a view of the building exterior with the addition from 24th Street. Next slide. This project this is slide 34. This is the Ocean View Public Library project. Next slide. You'll recall in 2019 we did a site feasibility study, and we selected we recommended a site at the corner of Orizaba Avenue, which is to the right there with the green line, and then Brotherhood Way to the south of the page. Next slide. Where we're at with the project now, this is slide 36, is the preliminary project assessment, the PPA. And it's a preliminary planning review, and the planners will review our package, which I'm going to show you momentarily, and recommend the environmental process to follow. The building designs that you see in these images are not really designs per se. It's a volumetric study locating a potential outline and volume of the building on site. So this is for planners to use when establishing their environmental process. Next slide. So this is the cover sheet from our PPA submission document. You can see the Golden Gate Bridge colored volume in the middle is a potential maximum volume of the building, and this is a view sort of a bird's eye view looking at Orizaba Avenue and Brotherhood Way with Alemany on the left. Next slide. This is the project location map with the proposed project boundary, which is the red outline that you see there. So the approximate project boundary is 31,000 square feet on the open space adjacent to Brotherhood Way in Orizaba. You can see it right in the middle. Next slide. These are images of the site. The upper left image shows where the point of view is taken from. So we have an image of Brotherhood Way showing this site on the upper right, and then a view of Orizaba and Brotherhood Way on the lower left. This slide to the lower right is Orizaba at where a potential building entry would be. Next slide. This is slide 40. These are more site views further down the site on Brotherhood Way. Next slide. This image is a tree plan, and this is slide 41. And as part of this work, we've been working with the Bureau of Urban Forestry, which is a public works organization, to identify important trees of significance, and define whether or not the tree will be protected or transplanted or removed. So there will be some tree removal as part of the project that will, for trees that are in poor condition, and those trees will be replaced in kind in other locations on the site. There are coast live oaks on site, and there's no coast live oaks that will be removed on the project. Next slide. This is the project site plan. The gray form in the middle is a building outline. The red arrows represent the entry points. The one on the lower right-hand side would be the main entry of the building, and the one on the upper left, that would be a children's courtyard. You can see how the building is designed to leave the trees in place and become a feature of the project. Next slide. And these are the two options that are on the table. And there's a 2-story option A and a 3-story option B to the right. For the planning exercise, we're gonna put forward the 3-story option. The idea is that we want to get the planners' reactions to the project and what an environmental work would need to be done after it. It's not necessarily proposing a design. Next slide. So these are images that are section elevations of the project that show. So the upper image is the image of the project along Brotherhood Way, and these give you the heights and the number of floors and roughly what would be included in the building. The lower image is Orizaba Avenue that shows the height of adjacent homes. Next slide. This is the 3-story version with a library plus potential space for a partner organization or tenant to be part of the library, or a larger library. Next slide. This is slide 46. This is the project schedule for Ocean View. We have begun submitting the project this week. We only have to make payment. I'm trying to figure out how to do that. We'll make payment tomorrow, and it will be submitted. And then they will review for completeness, and then they'll do a 60-day planning review. And at the end of that planning review, they will issue a PPA letter. So we anticipate getting that in April or May. And that letter will be, next slide, please. So that letter will tell us what our environmental evaluation will be. So just as a reminder that, the design depicted here is a volumetric study for planning. And then the next steps will be, like I said, dependent on the PPA letter recommendations. And then the next would be more detailed design at the concept design level, and a full-on planning application, which is called a PRJ. Next slide. This is the Chinatown Branch Library. Some images from the front. Next slide. Chinatown Himmark Lai branch. So we've completed a structural evaluation this fall, and that evaluation was an analysis of the historic reading room and the possibility of us of deleting existing structure in there that was installed in the 1990s. You'll see some images of that in a second. There's a historic evaluation which is ongoing. It's been drafted. It's somewhat contingent on where we land with the structural evaluation, but it's nearly complete. There will be community engagement in the spring, and we will do a design phase that will take us to next spring, and that would be schematic design, design development, construction documents, at which time we can do bidding. We will be able to bid the project and permit the project. Roughly, bidding would be fall of 2023. There would be approximately up to 2 years of construction duration, and completion could happen fall of 2025 or perhaps sooner. Those are tentative dates that I put out there. Next slide. The next few slides are just the existing building, and these are the reasons why we're doing this project. Next slide. The images on the left are the floor plans of the building. There's a ground floor at the lowest, and then there's the main floor in the middle, and then an existing mezzanine. You can see how confusing the plans are and convoluted the sequence is. The gray represents sort of staff and service spaces, and the purple more of the public orientation. On that middle image, the red dashed line, that's the mezzanine that intrudes upon the historic reading room. The red dotted line is the demarcation point between the historic reading room building on the right-hand side of the plans and then the 1990s addition. The image on the right is a building section with the same sort of demarcation with the 1997 addition in the historic building. You can see that there's 2 elevators and a lot of stuff going on in the reading room. Next slide. So these are, this is slide 52. These are pictures of the existing historic reading room with the renovation that was done in the 1990s. You can see the structural braces that were injected into the room with little regard for the symmetry of the space. Next slide. That is the upper left-hand slide is an image of the mezzanine and the braces that run across the space. And then you can see the braces that go across the windows in the front. So the structural analysis that we've been doing, and we've been working with our engineers from IDC and with a hired consultant called Structus, Swan and Robinson to do this evaluation, or to look at ways in which we could potentially get rid of these braces in this next renovation. Next slide. So we have been working with the library to create conceptual plans. These are nowhere near final. We've got a lot of work left to do with the library and with the community. We have 2 preliminary options. Next slide. So we'll go with the ground floor plan, main floor plan, and mezzanine. On the right hand side of this image is the entry and Powell Street. So in both concepts, we would maintain the entry where it's located now, which is to the left of the center of the building, or the lowest thing that says entry down there. And the idea being that we would clean up the plan, we would we would provide a significantly larger community room. That could be in keeping with our current projects. That would be more of a flexible space and more open to the library, and significantly larger than the current community room. Then as you go into the building, we would have a lobby We would clear out the elevator and bathrooms that are in that current lobby and move them elsewhere. And that lobby could be used for display or for self-service functions or other library functions. And then proceeding on, you would get to a welcome desk with staff spaces in the children's room to the left. Instead of having 2 elevators and no stair, the idea is that we would create a single stair that runs through the building and makes a communicating element between floors of the building, which they don't currently have. And then the elevator would be a single elevator that runs from the ground floor to the roof. The entry to the community room, which has been sort of boarded up now and has a display case on the outside, we would reopen that entry to the street, and we would warp the sidewalk, and we would provide an accessible entry to the community room. So after hours, access to the community room could be through the original entry doors. Next slide. This is the main floor plan. And again, these are very preliminary. The historic reading room is to the right. Notice that there's no elevator or additional desk. It'd be a single service point in that room. There would be an entry at the current location. The symmetry would be restored to the room. To the left, there would be, in this scheme, we're showing 2 service points, a welcome desk and an info desk. This is in discussion with the library right now, how that might happen. But you can see and whether we want to consolidate to a single service point. You see we have the stair and the elevator continuing through on the upper part of the plan. We would have a teen room in a prominent location in the plan. That's the golden shape on the left, with the staff workroom down below. Next slide. And this is the mezzanine. So the mezzanine in the current situation extends across the historic reading room. We're going to pare it back. We'll make a connecting element from the stair and the elevator that goes over to the mezzanine. In this version, it's shown as staff space. But we're looking at what this might be. Next slide. So this is a building section. The red dotted line is the demarcation point between historic and new. You can see on the left-hand side there, the idea of a single stair and elevator element that runs through. Historic reading room is on the right, and it's restored to its former glory. Lobby down below with the entries, children's room, and then the big reading room. Next slide. This is another option. We're calling it B, and this is again, well, it says main floor, it should say ground floor. My mistake, sorry about that. But you would enter at the vestibule on the lower part of the page. And in this version, we have a large community room and a group study room. I mean, that's all very flexible, what we can do with those spaces, and we're still exploring it. But the big idea here is that you come into a lobby, and then you go straight through. Now we're working with a structural engineer on the possibility of doing this and how wide we can make that opening where it says welcome desk. But the idea is that you would come straight in, which would be probably preferable. And then you go up to your stair and elevator to go to the upper floors. In both of these versions, we'll expand the number of bathrooms, and we will make sure that the community room works with easy after hours access. Next slide. This is the main floor plan again with the entry in the middle. The historic reading room. In this version, the desk is shown with more of a sight line to the stair and elevator and a little bit off the center line. Info desk to the left with adjacent staff areas, a large teen room, and an adult reading room. Next slide. And this would be a mezzanine floor plan similar to the one you saw before. And this one, it's a more comprehensive floor, and we would have enough area for some potential public use. Where we've got to work this out with the library, what program could occupy a mezzanine floor. Next slide. And just a couple of very preliminary interior views. And this is just some outtakes from the software we use. And you can see on the upper left image the idea of a stair that continues across in a mezzanine and that existing reading room the new reading room, not the historic reading room. And then on the right, just another view at a service desk. Next slide. Okay, that is it for me. Thank you.
Is that the end of the presentation, City Librarian?
President Wolf, and I want to thank Rebecca and Andy for their presentation this evening. We are so excited about these projects, and I also want to take this opportunity to thank the Library Commission for approving our budget earlier. I do want to acknowledge there's a lot of Mission Branch Library staff in particular in attendance at this meeting, and I want to acknowledge all their hard work to sustain service while the Mission Branch is closed. And I just want to reaffirm that we're working hard with our real estate partners to secure a lease for a temporary library site. And thank you again, Commissioners, for giving us an opportunity to make this presentation.
Wonderful. Thank you. That was really enriching and so robust. It's so exciting. But we're going to start with moving into our public comment before our commission discussion. Members of the public who wish to provide general public comment should now raise their hands in order to be added to the queue. If you're using the Webex interface, click the raise hand button in the lower right-hand portion of the screen. If you have called into the Webex dial-in number, please press *3 to line up to speak. Operations, are there any commenters in the queue?
Madam President, there are currently two commenters in the queue.
Thank you, Operations. Please begin allowing general public comment.
Caller 12, your 3 minutes begins now.
Hello, good afternoon. This is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association, Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com, and also P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California 94117-0544. Thank you very much for the presentations, and some 30 pages, almost 40. I've sometimes said that I would appreciate page numbers. The page numbers that Mr. Sohn was referring to were completely at variance with what is printed here. I don't know what his version is. For example, page 22 is slide 46, and so on and so forth. With respect to the presentations, first of all, it's interesting that public meetings were held for Mission Branch, but only when the final plans were in place. And that sounds to me unfortunate. It seems to me you should be definitely having meetings, including with librarians, but certainly with the public, well before final plans are made. And I attended some of those meetings, and I'm sorry to say that while I wouldn't argue with what the reported comments were, left out completely were that many people were concerned about the long closure of Mission already and the lack of specifics about temporary service, such as, we heard the questions that were asked, or some of them, what's the linear feet for books? How many books will there be? That one we didn't hear. How much space is being added? All these kind of questions got zero specific answers. And in particular, there wasn't a specific answer about what was the library looking for with respect to the temporary space that it was seeking. There were some suggestions about where to find space. So there was a lot left out there, and a good deal of unhappiness with some of the way that this had been, the stages at which this was, and the lack of specificity, or lack of answers completely. The entry for the proposed Ocean View Library is interesting and odd to me. You can't apparently see it from the crosswalk that basically approaches a clump of trees, and both of the entrances are on either side. And I'm glad to hear Mr. Sohn apparently respecting the original plan, and I think he used the word glorious, and presumably a lot of improvements to get back to what that was, as well as improvements for the overall design. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warfield, for your comments. Is there another person in the queue, operations?
Madam President, there is an additional commenter in the queue.
Thank you. You can proceed.
Marie, your 3 minutes begins now.
Hello, this is Marie Sapella, Executive Director of Friends of the San Francisco Public Library. And thank you for the presentation. It's all extremely exciting to see, particularly the fact that there's the drawings for Ocean View. And I am just, as we speak, writing the fundraising case for the Furniture, Fixtures, and Equipment campaign for the mission. So we are on it and very excited about it. And whenever Chinatown is ready, we're ready. And also I just wanted to say, for Ocean View, I know that there's reserve, and we can, work really hard over the next couple of years for getting to the dollar amount that we need. But you can count on us and friends. If you do not meet the dollar, we will do it. 5 million, 10 million, whatever it is, we will be there to do it. I love the Ocean View. Thank you for option 3 and approving the budget. I think that is really great. And I do just want to correct Peter Warfield's comment. I do believe the community meeting started in 2018, 2019, and 2020 in the mission community. So there's been a lot of community input. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marie, for your comments and for your leadership with the Friends of the San Francisco Public Library. Greatly appreciate your partnership. Are there any more callers in the queue?
Madam President, there are no additional commenters in the queue at this time, but I'll pause for a moment to give any additional commenters an opportunity to join the queue if they so choose. Madam President, there are still no additional commenters in the queue.
Thank you, operations. Hearing that there are no further requests for comment, general public comment is now closed, and we will turn now to commission discussion. This is a discussion item, not an action item, and I just want to once again thank Rebecca and Andy, who are here to answer any questions that the commissioners have. And I just want to, as we begin this conversation, just want to say that while we have seen such a dramatic increase in online engagement and outreach over the last 2 years during the COVID pandemic, this presentation just reaffirms that the physical presence of our library, the branches in every community, is essential for supporting community, building community, and creating wonderful centers of exchange, dialogue, learning, and expression. So this is very important, and it's really exciting. Thank you, Andy, for that very in-depth presentation. We have 3 different projects at 3 different stages. We have the Mission Branch that's ready to be bid, ready to go if we can just get PG&E on our side. We have Chinatown, which is now ready for public discussion and engagement to inform and shape the design process. And we have a wonderful opportunity to restore that building to its original grandeur. And then we have Ocean View, which is just starting the exploratory process to consider this new and vital and important branch in our system. So I open this up to fellow commissioner comments, and I know that some people are having a difficulty raising their hand in the process. So if you just want to step in and make a comment or ask questions, as I said, we have everyone here to answer your questions. Any comment or questions from the commissioners? Well, I think that everyone must be in agreement that this was an outstanding presentation, so thorough, so important, so vital, especially coming on the heels of voting for the budget and knowing that there are funds in place to move these projects forward. We also thank the Friends of the San Francisco Public Library for their partnership and their desire to support these efforts throughout the city. And so we now end this part of this agenda item, and we'll now move on.
President Wolf, I believe Dr. Lopez has her hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry, I can't see it. So go ahead.
For some reason, I cannot see it either.
I can now see it. Thank you. I'm so sorry, Commissioner Lopez. Please proceed.
Thank you for the presentation. Those are three very exciting projects, and a lot of information that you provided, different options, and I know different teams involved. So thank you for that. Thank you for everyone who's been working on these projects. I did have a question, and I think it's more of a clarification because I don't know if I missed it. But in terms of the soil at the Mission Library, I don't know. I think this is the. Can you elaborate more on that? My understanding is that they're gonna take samples.
Yeah.
Can you just enlighten me a little bit about like what are some of the expectations or what is it that they're looking for?
So this is Andy Sohn. Yeah, it's kind of a formality. It's a local ordinance called the Maher Ordinance, and it has to do with hazardous soils. And typically, they have there's some hydrocarbons or something like that, often that are related to old fuel oil tanks and things like that might have been in the ground. So I think it's just something that the DPH needs to do before they can sign off on our permit. And it's also something that we need before we can complete some of the documents for the hazardous materials remediation that would the work plan that's included in our bid documents. So it is kind of a formality. The soil is the same soil that was down there when they did the addition and work back in the 1990s. So it's not that big a deal. And I don't know what they expect to find, but it came up as a result of a discrepancy on the Maher map from when we started the project till now. So that's it.
Thank you for clarifying. I wasn't quite sure if I understood that process. So, and it just caught my attention, but thank you.
Well, every project we do has to get screened for the Maher Ordinance. And we did that screening when we started the project, and then Public Health had a different interpretation than our site assessment remediation people. And so we're just going to go through the motions and get done with this part, and we'll conclude it this month.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lopez, for that question, and Andy for that thorough response. Any other comments before we move on? Okay, so we are now concluding item number 3, and we will now move to item number 4, which is the City Librarian's Report. This is a discussion item on the agenda, and I turn the meeting over to City Librarian Lambert.
Thank you, President Wolf, and good evening, Library Commissioners. We have a couple of reports this evening, and I'm pleased to introduce our first presenter, Shelley Cocking, Chief of Collections and Technical Services, with an exciting report on our new and improved mobile app. Shelley?
Thank you, Michael. Yes, I'm here today to talk to you about our SFPL mobile app. Back in 2015, we launched our first library catalog app offered by BiblioCommons. It was adequate for the time, but didn't have many bells or whistles. That's why we are delighted to introduce the new and much improved BiblioCommons mobile app 2.0, which makes the library experience much, not yet ready to go to slide 2, but it's okay. Which makes the library experience much more attractive and easier to navigate. It's much closer to the desktop version of the BiblioCommons that many of our patrons find so easy to use. Next slide, please. The sleek new look has a handy dashboard right at the top, giving users the most vital information, such as, do they have anything overdue? Or are their holds ready for them to pick up at the branch? You can also just tap on My Borrowing for even more information. The landing page also includes some handy lists of new materials that just arrived at the library. And if you scroll down, you'll see lists created by our staff on different subjects, as well as any shelves you may have created for yourself within BiblioCommons. The new app also comes with a digital library card, cleaner search screens, and help screens embedded right where you need them. Let's take a closer look at some of these new features. Next slide, please. So in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a tiny little library card. If you tap on that, your digital library card will come up. This is my favorite new feature, and I use it all the time. When I come and pick up my holds, I don't have to go digging through my purse trying to find my library card. I already have my phone close at hand, so I just grab my books and my phone, head over to a self-check machine, and it's really easy to check out. And as I mentioned, those handy-dandy answers to your questions are right where you want to find them. You don't have to go searching at the bottom of our page trying to find an FAQ and figure out if there's a question that's in there that matches your question. You can see in the example here where a patron will notice, oh, it looks like my library card is expiring this month. The blue text is going to be, the most likely question the patron might have at the time, like, oh, how do I renew that card? And you can go ahead and tap on it and it'll bring up the answer to your question. Let's go to the next slide, please. Another fun option is this new search strategy. So let's imagine that you're out with a friend and they have a book in hand and are telling you how much they love it. Now you can open up our app, tap on the search icon, and you'll notice in the upper right-hand corner, there's a little barcode. You go ahead and tap on that. It'll bring up the search barcode screen, and then you just hover your phone over the book till you get the barcode in that clear rectangle there, and it automatically does a search in our catalog. If we have the book, it brings up the title page, and you can quickly go ahead and place a hold on the item. And if you want, you can see if we have it in ebook and even check out the ebook right there. Next slide, please. It's also really easy to save or share a title now. You can see on the clean search results screen that there are 3 little dots on the right of each of the formats listed under a title. All you have to do is simply tap on one of those dots, and you can quickly save it to one of these shelves you've created in BiblioCommons. I like to do this and add it to my For Later shelf, and then that way I have a nice list of books that I want to read later on, and when I have nothing at home at the moment, I can go ahead and go back into my shelf and add holds to it at that point. From the title screen, you can easily share the link to any of the books or other items in our catalog, just like you would do in other apps. So in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see that familiar share icon. Go ahead and tap on that, and it brings you right to a place where you can text or Facebook message or whatever you want to do to share with a friend. Next screen, please. The locations page has really been cleaned up in this new app. It's got the option to sort not only alphabetically, but by distance. You'll notice here on this screen that the main library is listed first with a gold star next to it. I've marked that as my preferred branch, so it'll automatically be at the top of the list regardless of which search I'm doing. You can also filter to open only locations, and then that way if you're out and about and you really need to print something or you need to go into a research project, you can quickly find the closest branch to run to. Then once you tap on a branch's name, it'll bring up the branch information, quickly see how far away it is from your location. If it's closed, it'll tell you the next time it's going to open, and it has the full schedule of the open hours, easily seen on the first page. If you scroll down, you'll get the phone number and address to the branch. And as with many apps, if you tap on the phone number, it automatically pops up and gets ready to call the number for you. And if you tap on the address, it automatically opens your preferred mapping app and gives you directions on how to get to that location. Next screen, please. So I'm going to finish up with an exciting announcement that our app comes in multiple languages, and it does this really seamlessly. So when you download the app, it automatically checks with your mobile operating system to see which language preference you have selected, and it presents the app in that language. It's available in English, Chinese, both simplified and traditional, Filipino, Japanese, Russian, Spanish, and Vietnamese. We've already started to launch this app. We did a soft launch with staff in the middle of January to give them time to download it and play with it and get ready for questions that they might have. This week, we put it on a little message on the BiblioCommons login screen. So anyone logging into our catalog might see it and give it a try. We're going to follow that up with having an article in our e-newsletter that comes out this weekend. We'll have a social media push after that, and we'll finish it up with an article at the public library for March, so people will have it in print as well. I'd like to give a big shout out to our staff and our IT and public affairs departments who worked very closely with BiblioCommons to customize the app for SFPL. And a special thanks to Noel Navarrete, who managed the project. He did a really great job. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll be happy to answer any questions later.
Thank you so much, Shelley. Commissioners, I am a huge fan of this app. I encourage everyone listening to this presentation to go in the App Store and download it on your phone. It's so handy to be able to search for books anywhere, particularly if you're in a bookstore and you're unsure if you want to buy a book. You can test it out, check it out from your neighborhood library. You can keep track of everything you have on hold. And I, for one, have not committed all 28 library locations addresses to memory, so this is very handy to be able to pull that up when you need to. So thanks again, Shelley. Our next presenter is Kate Patterson, our Director of Communications, and she has a report on the library's economic recovery campaign. Kate?
Good evening, Commissioners. Can everyone hear me okay? Can you hear me?
Yep. Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good. Okay, you. Well, good evening. Thanks again. I'm delighted to join you this evening to present an overview of what we're calling the library's economic recovery campaign, which is currently being rolled out. Can I please have the next slide? The impetus for this has its origins in the fall of 2020, when San Francisco's unemployment rate surpassed 12%. Some of you may recall that we issued a press release announcing that we had, quote unquote, doubled down on economic recovery programs to help our patrons regain their economic footing in the wake of the pandemic. In the same release, we announced our Work It program series, which was essentially a rebrand of the excellent jobs, business, and finance classes being offered by our Business, Science, and Technology Center. We also took the opportunity to promote Work It's close cousin, Tech Time, which supports patrons in building their digital literacy. As reported on in the annual report, both of these programs have seen a tremendous amount of growth. Last fiscal year, our job and career programs saw a 520% increase in attendance. Personal finance class attendance grew by 119%, and small business classes are up 127%. Tech Time drew more than 4,800 patrons over the course of last fiscal year. This economic recovery campaign capitalizes on the success of these programs, while connecting patrons to other valuable resources such as support for small businesses, Career Online High School, Jobs Now one-on-one coaching through BrainFuse and Project Read. In short, through this campaign, we are serving up the whole menu of options to help our patrons recover or find new success. I like to say that we are also helping our patrons connect the dots between these types of services so that they can tailor their own wraparound support. It's worth noting, too, that this campaign also comes at a time when the state has increased funding for libraries to add a broad array of free software to help patrons learn new vocational and academic skills, earn professional certificates, and prepare for in-demand jobs. News about this investment appeared in an article in the Chronicle in November. In it, it mentions the fact that, quote unquote, as workers returning from pandemic layoffs seek new positions, 1.4 million Californians are unemployed and 4.8 million are functionally unemployed, meaning they do not have stable jobs paying above the poverty level. So the need for these types of programs is still very great. And as you recall from Maureen's earlier presentation, they are very much in line with the mayor's budget priorities. We wanted this campaign to be uplifting, hopeful, and aspirational. The slogan for this campaign is, "We're here to get you there." Whatever there looks like for our public, our patrons, the library is a good place to start them on their journey. We will measure the success of this campaign based on increases in attendance for all highlighted programs, which again include Work It, Tech Time, Jobs Now, one-on-one coaching, Smart Money coaching, Career Online High School, and Project Read. Next slide, please. This is a look at, the first thing we did is we created a new landing page that aggregated all of the different programs that I just mentioned. Again, we really want people to be able to connect the dots between the various offerings. And so this is a way for us to help help patrons navigate to those resources. So here is a screenshot of the page, and we offer the landing page in Chinese and Spanish as well as English. So here's a view of the Chinese page. The other thing we did, which you can see on the right, is we placed ads in the February issues of some of our neighborhood newspapers, including The Wind, El Tecolote, Richmond Review, Sunset Beacon, and San Francisco Bayview. Yeah, and in addition to the neighborhood newspapers, we're also going to post an ad on LinkedIn. And we haven't done that yet, and so we're excited to see how that performs. I'd also like to note here that we created a unique bit.ly or QR codes for all of the different marketing assets so that we can track their efficacy as they roll out. So as you'll see different variations on specifically the URL, the QR code. If you can see a variation in that, then you're a genius. But the URLs will have will be slightly different so that we can track traffic coming in from those different URLs. Next slide, please. We created trilingual flyers, which have since been distributed to all of the branch locations, and we've encouraged staff to create displays to prominently advertise these types of resources at all of our locations. Next slide. And here's a look at some bus ads which were installed this week. So for those of you who ride the bus, please keep your eyes peeled. I want to thank the SFMTA for their partnership on this. And again, we're offering them in Spanish, Chinese, and English. Next slide. And this is a draft of a postcard, which we hope to send out in partnership with the Human Services Agency. For this, we're going to be targeting adults up to the age of 60 who receive benefits from CalWorks and CalFresh. We're in the process of sort of whittling down the lists so that it is actually, so that we can actually execute on it. It's rather pricey, so we want to just make sure that we are being very focused in who we target. With that, another sort of aspect to this is we really wanted to think about those who've been hardest hit by the pandemic. So our residents in the southeast corridor of the city, in the Tenderloin, Treasure Island. And so as we work with the Human Service Agency to narrow down the list, we'll be focusing in on those zip codes which have felt the most impact from the pandemic. Next slide. And lastly, we, thanks to friends, we have engaged Hearst Media to build out a complementary component to this campaign, one that will be very data heavy and data driven, and will focus on some platforms that we haven't historically exploited, like streaming services, like running ads on YouTube, Spotify, and Hulu. We are looking at a target market of 18 to 54-year-olds from communities that I just mentioned, those that have been disproportionately impacted by COVID. And these are just a few of the channels that we're exploring. We only just got the proposal, so we're going through that and trying to figure out what will work best for us. But a big part of the this part of the advertising campaign will be a video component and some streaming video ads. So we're working through that. We will likely focus on promoting the Work It program, but knowing that the Work It landing page and the Work It programs are now linked to all of these other programs, we hope that the traffic coming through for the Work It program will also grab people's attention and draw them to some of the other programs that I highlighted. So more to come on that, but I want to thank the Friends for their support of this initiative, and we'll have much more exciting things to share in the coming months. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge the great work of Betty Ho, who labored over this. It took us a long time to, I think, fine-tune the messaging and the tone, and I think we got there in the end. And then, of course, Jamie Wong and Michelle Jeffers for being my thought partners as we develop this. And that's it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Kate. And I just want to echo the appreciation for the Friends and Foundation of the San Francisco Public Library for supporting us and amplifying the work that we do. And that concludes the City Librarian's Report.
Wonderful. Great presentations from Shelley and from Kate. We're going to now begin our public comment before we have our commission discussion. So for members of the public who wish to provide general public comment, you should now raise your hands in order to be added to the queue. If you're using the Webex interface, click the raise hand button on the lower right-hand portion of the screen. If you have called into the Webex dial-in number, please press *3 to line up to speak. Operations, are there any callers, commenters in the queue?
Madam President, there's currently one commenter in the queue.
Thank you. Please begin allowing public comment.
Caller 12, your 3 minutes begins now.
Good evening. This is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association, Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com and P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California, 94117-0544. I'd like to say as a phone user, I had difficulty getting into this public comment. I repeatedly pressed *3 and paused for a moment. Didn't hear any acknowledgement of my pressing *3. I had to press multiple times, and I only got through finally by pressing for a long time on * and a long time on 3, and then I finally found out I was muted and had to do it again. So I was concerned about missing public comment because of what seems to be a flaw in your system. And I hope you appreciate my telling you this, because you certainly want to give public comment an opportunity, and a fair one. With respect to the two presentations, first of all, no page numbers. I think you ought to learn about the high-tech concept of page numbers and insist that, especially for people trying to follow without the visuals, like myself, that there be page numbers referenced every time you go to a new page, and correct ones. The SFPL, well, first of all of the motives and the goals, as far as I'm concerned, are good with respect to both of these programs. Let's start with the catalog, making the catalog more useful, making the library more accessible is fine. The problem that I have is that big problem. Money, 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 and effort for digital access. And you won't even send to the people who are on your mailing list because they don't have or don't want email or computer access. You won't send them anything, even notices about library hours changes, new library openings, or any other thing that you send in your weekly email notices. That would cost you trivial amounts of money and certainly not much effort, nothing is being done with respect to that. And the same thing with access to ebooks. There's no access from the library for most of the ebooks, and those that do have access would be presumably on the person's timed 1 hour or 2 hours on the computer. So that is a very serious problem that I have with this. Number two, the economic recovery plan. Oh, the other thing is bibliocommons, toxic to privacy of the patron, and also there's a question of whether they can censor or limit comments or exclude them for whatever reason they want.
Thank you, Mr. Warfield, for your comments. Operations, are there any more commenters in the queue?
Madam President, this time there are no additional commenters in the queue. I'll pause briefly to allow additional commenters to join the queue if they so choose. Madam President, at this time, there are no additional commenters in the queue.
Thank you, Operations. Hearing no further requests for comment, general public comment is now closed, and we will now turn to the discussion with the Commission. I know that Shelley and Kate, who gave outstanding presentations, so informative, thank you, are available to respond to any questions or comments that the commissioners have. And I will begin with, I thought I saw Commissioner Ono having her hand up. Did you want to comment? Go ahead, Commissioner Ono.
Hi, thank you, Shelley and Kate, for your great presentations as always. Michael, I'm surprised you don't know all of the locations and can't get there without a mobile app. But I do appreciate the mobile app, and I will try and get to all of the locations using it and take my Explorer map with me. I know there are some people who are going to say, why are we spending all this money on a mobile app when some people do not have smartphones? But for those who do have smartphones, I'm sure they'll appreciate all of the new and innovative ways we can use the library. The economic recovery plan is just amazing. I'm so impressed with everything that the library does, but this one just really warms my heart to know that we're really helping people that really struggled, especially over the last couple of years. So I give kudos, and you guys mentioned Noel, Betty Ho, Jamie, Michelle, everyone involved with everything that the library does. Thank you. And again, this is the best part of the meetings for me.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Ono. Those were wonderful comments. Any further comments or questions from fellow commissioners? Dr. Lopez.
Great presentations, great programs. I'm very excited. I'm very excited because for both of the programs, the access to language is always one of the things that I look for, and I think that we're reaching out different communities by having trilingual, multilingual messaging, and the app will be having it in different languages is just like a must. So I appreciate. Thank you for all your hard work. In terms of the recovery program, I was wondering if you have reached out to alternative schools and community colleges as well. I think that it won't hurt to promote that program in those areas as well. Because I just think that if the more we promote it, the better. So I'm very excited. I'm gonna download my app tonight and play around with it. So thank you, and I really appreciate all the work that you have done with both projects.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think, Kate, did you want to respond to one of her questions?
Yeah, so as of now, we haven't specifically targeted City College, say, but that's a great idea. And I would say that, this is something we'll continue to iterate on. And so if you have those ideas and if you have specific contacts or specific outlets, please pass them on to me, and I'm happy to look into them.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions from the commissioners? If there are none, I would just like to add my gratitude to the incredible staff and team. I know one of the things that I really appreciate, and I think this meeting, the agenda really speaks to it, the importance of physical locations for people to come to gain access, to have services, as well as the online community. What I appreciate about what the leadership of the library does and all of the staff is recognize that there are multiple entry points and that every entry point needs to be taken seriously. I think that I just have to say that I don't know when this new app was launched, but I use the app all the time. And all of a sudden one day I opened it and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is fantastic. It finally really reflects the goals and the values of and access that the library supports. So thank you so much for that. And to Kate's presentation and all the people who support that. I love that the website, one of the things you described is that everything is coming together into one page so that we're making things accessible and people know about what we're doing in new ways. So thank you to everybody for your incredible contributions. So now we will return to item number 5, which is to approval of the January 2022 meeting minutes. This is for discussion and action. And before we proceed, I just want to start by mentioning that there is one missing element, which is recognizing the participation of our newest commissioner, Commissioner Bolander, and that will be added. So now we begin with public comment before our committee discussion. And I just want to say that let me just get the right sheet of paper here. That if you are in the, and 1 second, that we are open for public comment. And for those who wish to provide public comment, please raise your hand in order to be added to the queue. And if you're using the Webex interface, click the raise hand button in the lower right-hand portion of the screen. If you have called into the Webex dial-in number, please press *3 to line up to speak. Operations, are there any commenters in the queue?
Madam President, at this time, there is one commenter in the queue.
Thank you, Operations. Please begin allowing general public comment.
Caller 12, your 3 minutes begins now.
Thank you. This is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association, Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com, and PO Box 170544, San Francisco, California 94117-0544. These minutes are actually quite shocking. And in particular, it's another occurrence of the approval of the minutes completely omitting the toxic aspects of Facebook that I have tried since October to bring up and that have been excluded every time. The testimony of Frances Haugen in the Capitol saying that Facebook was harmful to children and that their priority was harm and the profit associated with it over safety. This was, I also mentioned an Atlantic Monthly article in the November issue during this public comment by Adrian LaFrance, and it talked about essentially you should not go on Facebook, that it's tearing apart democracy, and he recommended shunning it as a civic duty. this isn't just what you have here on the with regard to what I said is my issues, his issues with Facebook. And there was quite a bit more than I talked about in detail about what Facebook has been revealed to be harmful to the users. In my 1 minute left, with respect to agenda item number 1, and in all of these items, I haven't been given title or organizational connection or the contact information that I provide in full, only partially once. And I'd like to have those on all of the occasions because I say it every time. I welcomed the new commissioner and was the first one to do so. I don't know that any commissioner welcomed or that it certainly wasn't on the agenda. So I don't know on what basis that's going to be added. I welcomed a new commissioner. There was also something left out about election of officers. I was very specific and lengthy about one person that I did not recommend, and that's been completely excluded. So there's a number of other things, but I think my time is about to run out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Warfield. Operations, is there another commenter in the queue?
Madam President, at this time, there are no additional commenters in the queue. I'll pause for a moment to allow additional commenters to join the queue if they so choose. Madam President, there are no additional commenters in the queue.
Thank you, Operations. Hearing no further requests for comment, public comment is now closed, and we will move to commission discussion on this item. Commissioners, do you have any comments and additions? Teresa, Commissioner Ono, your hand is raised.
Yes, thank you very much. You had mentioned that Commissioner Bolander was not included in the minutes. The only occurrence is at the very beginning where it says present, but in all of the votes, his name is included. So I would like to make that correction just to add his name to the very beginning. And if I can make one other change, it's on agenda item number 7, Dr. Carolyn Scott. The first line, it says it's not her first, it was her first attending, not, but I think it said, but not her last. So we can change knit to but if that is the correct, and I would like to make a motion to approve with those amendments.
So Commissioner Ono has made a motion to approve with those two amendments. Do we have a second for that?
I like to second it. This is Commissioner Wardell Garaduzzi.
Commissioner Wardell Garaduzzi is seconding it. So Commissioner Ono has made the motion. It's been seconded by Commissioner Wardell Garaduzzi. I will now call the roll of the remaining commissioners who should vote aye or no. Please say aye or no when I call your name. Vice President Huang.
Aye.
Commissioner Mall.
Aye.
Commissioner Bolander.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
And I would like to register aye for this item. This motion passes unanimously. We're now complete with item number 5. We move on to the final agenda item for today's meeting, which is adjournment, and there is an action for this. We move into our public comment before our commission discussion. Members of the public who wish to provide general public comment should now raise their hands in order to be added to the queue. You may do so by, if you're on the web face interface, click the raise hand button in the lower right-hand portion of the screen. If you've called into Webex dial-in number, please press *3 to line up to speak. Operations, are there any commenters in the queue?
Madam President, there is one commenter in the queue.
Thank you, Operations. Please begin allowing general public comment.
Caller 12, your 3 minutes begins now.
Good evening, commissioners and those present. Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association, Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com. and P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California 94117-0544. I would like to ask you not to adjourn until you have insisted, or that someone has, that you should have on every agenda item in the future an item at or near the end that provides an opportunity for you as commission members to recommend subjects or any other kind of item that you want on a future agenda. That's something that's standard with many bodies and certainly in the city. And it's something that you used to do here at the commission as well. I'd also like to say that I certainly didn't say anything against developing something for mobile apps. I said that with all that effort, how about something for the folks that don't have basically free and equal access? I'd like to ask the city librarian and the commission for a recording of this meeting, which I believe you have access to. And I'd also like to ask each commissioner and the city librarian for a screenshot of what they're looking at right now. I noticed that there were differences between what apparently could be seen by the chair, who said she couldn't see one of the commissioners' raised hands, while the city librarian said Commissioner Lopez, I believe, has her hand up. So that's one of the reasons I would like to see just a screenshot of what document is sitting in front of you right now in order to run this meeting. So two things: a recording of the meeting, and from each commissioner and the city librarian what you are looking at during this public comment. You can send it to libraryusers2004@yahoo.com or by mail to P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California 94117-0544. I hope you work out the problems that you were having with the technology earlier today. I hope you get to the bottom of what's going on with commissioners themselves not being able to indicate they want to comment. And I had a problem as well that I reported to you. It seems to have gone away in these subsequent things, but I think you might want to find out and have a report on what's going on with the technology. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Warfield, for your comments. Operations, is there another commenter in the queue?
Madam President, there are no additional commenters in the queue at this time. I'll pause for a moment to allow additional commenters to join the queue if they so choose. Madam President, there don't appear to be any additional commenters in the queue.
Thank you, Operations, and thank you for your service tonight. Hearing no further requests for comment, public comment is now closed. So we now move on to commission discussion on this item and it's an action item. I would just like to say this was really thank my fellow commissioners for their support this evening. We made a big decision in voting for the budget and supporting the library staff's vision for the next few years. And we just want to also thank all of the library staff who have participated today and those who have helped make every day a meaningful day at the library for our community and our city. So any comments or a motion from the commissioners?
I move that the meeting be adjourned.
That was Commissioner Hall, and who is seconding? Let's see.
I can second it. It's Mary.
Okay, Mary, Commissioner Wardell Garducci is seconding the motion. So we have so the motion has been made by Commissioner Mall, a second from Commissioner Wardell Garducci to approve the adjournment of today's meeting. I will call the roll of the remaining commissioners who should say aye or no when your name is called. Vice President Huang.
Aye.
Commissioner Ono.
Aye.
Commissioner Bolander.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
And as president, I also vote aye. The motion passes unanimously to adjourn the meeting. Thank you to everybody for coming, our participants online and people calling in. We thank you. We look forward to seeing you again in March. And thank you to everyone. Enjoy your library. Good night.